those homeschool planning notebooks out because I've got a few ideas for you for including writing in your upcoming homeschool. So, first off, I just want to say, if you've ever heard me speak about self-directed education or unschooling or child-directed learning, and you've probably heard me speak about all of those a lot, you're probably wondering why I'm pulling out curriculum. Why am I talking about specific books that I do with my kids or specific activities? Want to guess? Because I've been homeschooling for 15 years, so I have done it all. In fact, one of the books I'm going to recommend today is absolutely not from the world of unschooling. It is indeed The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Wise Bauer and Jessie Wise. Notice how large that book is? I have read and reread this book so many times. It's a guide to classical education at home. And though I don't recommend trying to do it fully all the time, because I did, and I kind of burned out, there are a bajillion ideas in here in how to incorporate ideas from pretty much anything, any subject. And they're very clever ideas. And I have practiced using many of them. And so I'm accustomed to thinking in a way that actually helps my kids write in ways that actually suits them. Having said that, I think there are many different ways to approach homeschooling, and it truly doesn't matter to me how you engage your homeschool. It's just, I ask you one question. Is it working for you? And that's all you need. If you answer yes, then great. Then let's just keep doing that, right? That's the goal. And if it isn't, then maybe we need to shift. But in response to someone the other day that said, well, what is the right homeschool philosophy? Of course, everybody's going to have an opinion. And if you've homeschooled long enough, you're going to say I'm an eclectic homeschooler, because that's what we usually do, is we pick and choose from all sorts of different things. But I don't think there is one right way. I think it should work for your family however you do it. And so if you really want to figure out what the best way is, you could just try all the homeschool philosophies. And you too will join the ranks of veteran homeschoolers and say that you are an eclectic homeschooler. But today, because I have spent a lot of time in this book, The Well-Trained Mind, and it is an excellent tome, I am going to tell you that you can get a lot of really fabulous ideas from this book about how to write. And also, more importantly, writing ideas. Not so much how to write as much as ideas to write. So she often refers to the Kingfisher history encyclopedia and says you could read a little bit, you could write a little bit. I know that one of my kids used the topic of the Titanic for an entire year and used that in a variety of different writing approaches. So maybe fictional narratives, or maybe she pretended to be a journalist and write what was happening on the ship, or what was happening in the era around the Titanic. Certainly she discusses different books that you could read and then create summaries of them, and all the traditional kind of stuff that you find in a classroom, that kind of thing. I'm going to tell you straight off that the way that I engage writing is very similar to what Julie Bogart does, and the way that she approaches it is really more about finding your voice and learning how to express yourself and create logical arguments around what you think. And so what do we really call that? You can call it a brave writer, because I think it truly is a brave writing to actually speak out your voice and say what you really believe, and at the same time to communicate it clearly so other people can understand it, not necessarily agree with it, but understand it. That would be maybe one of the goals of writing. And her approach that she has online for all the different courses that she does, or even in her 7-day challenge, all of those approaches to writing really resonate with how I approach writing in my own homeschool. So one of the things that I love to do is give my kids a book like Gail, Carson, Levine's Writing Magic, and let them read a little bit, either with me, or sometimes it was 2 siblings at a time that would read a chapter together. And then we would spend all November writing, doing the NaNoWriMo for kids. And sometimes some kids could do thousands of words. They would create their own stories. And it was really an ability to go creative. that was an aspect of writing, but there's other ways to do writing. Of course, there's cursive. We could discuss why or should we do cursive. I figure kids probably should know how to write cursive because people are still writing cursive. But I have teenagers and they use words that I don't understand. And it turns out the old is going to go away and I will have to learn the new ways of approaching things. So hard to know. That's a good debate, good discussion. But I have actually encouraged my kids to do cursive. And so one of the things that I've done is gone on a Charlotte Mason website. It's called simplycharlottemason.com. You can see that there. And they have some books on quotes that the kids could write out in cursive. So there's a quote here called, "Amid pleasures and palaces though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home," by John Howard Payne. And they would get their cursive writing paper or their journals out and they would write that in their beautiful cursive, or not so beautiful cursive, as it most certainly was the case for most of them. But their grandpa, who is a elementary school principal and longtime teacher, had beautiful cursive. So I always thought his letters were beautiful encouragements to them to do beautiful cursive as well, and to be able to read it, by the way. So there's opportunities to do these. You can find this online on Google. You can print out a book versus movie, and it really is a discussion for them to really consider after they've read a book, what their opinions are of the book, what do they think about the movie version, the similarities or differences between the book and movie, did the movie characters and scenery match what you imagined while reading the book? Usually no is the answer. Which version do you prefer, book or movie, and why? Of course, you can also find forms like this on Google just for the purpose of downloading simple book reports. Do you want to do that? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe your children really love books. Maybe they could actually create their own blog specific to their books that they're reading. I had a child, my oldest at home right now, graduate just this year, and she had written an entire blog over the course of a year or so on a cooking blog, a book that she really loved, French cooking. The author, I should remember, the cook, Julie and Julia, from the movie Julie and Julia. I should remember the name. Julia Child. And so she actually went through the French cookbook and did all the recipes, and then she wrote her opinions on different recipes, and she did that as a blog. Probably 2 or 3 of my kids have written articles for different homeschool magazines, and I can remember that specific child did an article called The Mini Medical Residency. I had another child who did a YouTube channel for a few years, a really successful YouTube channel, and she had written an article about how to create video for YouTube, and she sent that to a magazine. She also wrote about her 7th birthday in Paris. That was a narrative that she'd written. I had a child that was very interested in animal facts and different animals, so she created her very own encyclopedia. Now, you ask, why? Because there are so many Usborne First encyclopedias of our world. There's so many different animal encyclopedias out there. But it was a creative venture, and she enjoyed doing it. So she would draw a picture of an animal. She would keep it in order from the alphabetic order. She would write about all the different things like the habitat or what sorts of things they ate or the reproductive cycle. And she would include that as part of science and as part of writing. There was a specific book that I used for a long time. I don't think I have it anymore because I think I lent it to a friend. But it was a book about grammar by Susan Wise Bauer. And it was just for grade 1, grade 2. I think teaching grammar is tricky. That can be super, super boring for the parent, let alone the child. But it's useful for us to understand what the correct grammatical sequences are in sentences, for kids to understand how to write clearly. And I continue to do that myself as a writer, and I see that it's a progression and a development. And if somebody were to come along and check all my grammar and tell me how to do it correctly, I might appreciate that. And yet, I don't care. If you understand what I'm writing, That's what I care about. And so it's important when we're reading our kids' writing not to go first to their grammar and say, this doesn't make sense, but rather ask them, cool, tell me more, or what got you interested in this subject, or explore what they're actually writing and show interest. And that should always be the first thing that we do. You could ask a child at some point in the process to say, can you help me understand what you meant by this sentence? Okay. Maybe there's a way you could explain it, and it would be even more understandable if you said it in a certain way. But you do that carefully and rarely. The last thing that I'm going to share with you is that there is an entire writing series that is called Essentials in Writing. And if you are looking for a writing curriculum that you can put in your hands and use, that was the one that I used for probably most of the kids at different times between grade 8 and grade 10. And it helped you understand how to write an essay or a research paper. It was useful. I've used all sorts of writing curriculum. I really like Brave Writer, and I really like how the coaches actually encourage kids to write. So I would always encourage people to go that direction. But there is no exact math or science to writing. There is something that you really need to do when you're trying to encourage your child to write, and it is to get out of the way and encourage their voice, but don't always go to the grammatical aspects of it or to the mechanics of writing, because they need to develop their voice. They need to know different ways of thinking and engaging, how to actually speak what they think and do it clearly and come up with approaches or arguments that actually support what they think. That's the goal, is to develop their voice. Grammar can happen later. But if you've got a really great grammatical approach, I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. And as I know that you know, there are probably 1 bajillion possible ways to approach writing in your homeschool. There are Evan Moore books. You've seen these. There's book report journals. I absolutely insist on journaling, getting my kids to journal most days. I encourage it, I should say, on repeat, because I think it really helps us understand what we think, how we feel, the ability to express it, and also, frankly, it's just a really good tool for emotional exploration. And that would probably be the biggest thing that we can help leave our children. The most important thing that we can leave with them is really learning how to deal with your emotions, but that's a different discussion. But developing voice, developing their inner person, giving them a reason to want to write, find their interest, and find a way to incorporate writing for the purpose of developing their ability to communicate. If you've got other thoughts, put them down below. I'm interested in hearing from you as well. Talk to you soon.